importance of introspective consciousness in ethical life. Professor Nath belongs to IIT Mumbai. Thank you. And now I invite Professor Nath to come over and present the
Thank you, sir. Respected dignitaries on the dais and of the dais, and dear students and friends, I would like to give a brief, as they suggested me to finish the talk within 12 minutes. Very difficult to finish this, but I would like to try to give some important ideas about introspective consciousness in ethical life, because here for me consciousness can be divided into two kinds, although there are various kinds. One is each consciousness and the off consciousness. Here I would like to locate introspective consciousness in the lens of off consciousness, because introspective consciousness, which is talk about awareness, we talk about self-consciousness, and it is talk about self-reflective, as well as it talk about inner awareness, and it is a kind of a self-help where we can guide our life and it correct ourselves also in the absence of self-help. And these are aspects especially because I do philosophy, especially analytic philosophical traditions. Many scholars they claim that we talk about minimal consciousness, and therefore these are the problems which exist. But this introspective consciousness, which many times talk about harmony between your body, spirit, and mind. Also, in psychological talk about anger, happiness, and many kind of things. Although introspection is a identical with thinking. It's identical with thinking rationally, thinking to be better. You see, and that way we talk about these kind of ideas. And although many times this introspection talk about metacognition. We get some kind of knowledge, cognitive knowledge from the world. It goes sometimes beyond from this cognitive activities. In that sense, we talk about metacognition. Through the introspective consciousness, we talk about many kind of mental content. You see, we have, whenever I am thinking about this seminar, the conference, I have many kind of contents are there in the mind, and which are also intentional. I am supposed to do the things, or I am supposed to meet my friends, supposed to prepare for the presentations, supposed to interact with many kind of things, supposed to book a taxi to visit this place. Many kind of ideas are there about the introspections. And therefore, many times this introspection is many times is kind of a reflective as well as it's a kind of logical. It's not illogical. You see, whenever I am saying Ram is shorter than Hari, automatically Hari is taller than Ram becomes this kind of sentence. Therefore, this kind of ideas will be in the introspective and introspective consciousness talk about subjectivity experience, and which is one of the important topics in philosophy of mind, as well as kind of controversial topics, because many people talk about the idea of subjectivity without the existence of subject. You see, there is subjectivity is there, but the subject is not there. Because the idea of subject is a kind of a novel idea, which is not existing in the idea. Especially many scientists they claim this kind of ideas, and therefore, what they talk about introspective, which is from the off consciousness perspective. And this introspective consciousness is balance the state of mind, and it leads some kind of a inner harmony, and this is possible through also yogic life, because therefore yogic life is necessary to be in introspective states, and it is a kind of states. Introspective state is a kind of a self-evaluative state, and we are evaluating and this kind of things, and therefore again this idea of this introspective things talk about the idea of many kind of mental activities like the mental conditions, and which is also talk about gathering some knowledge, judgments, beliefs, many kind of things. We have many kind of belief system in the world. Therefore, this kind of ideas also we find introspective. And many times introspectives are about non-mental aspect of the body, non-mental aspect of the body. And again, whenever we talk about introspective consciousness, we talk about first-person perspective, and which generates the knowledge about yourself, about others also. Because not only I am introspecting, I have to talk about others also existing also. Therefore, the idea of other mind plays very vital role, because I cannot, if I am saying that I am existing, at the same time others also exist, which will find this kind of things. And many times this introspective consciousness brings some kind of changes in human being, in our day-to-day activities. You see, whenever we think about something, suppose I have committed some kind of mistakes, and I think then I recorrect myself. You see, it changes. It brings the changes, and it brings the changes, and it brings some kind of acceptance rather than tolerance. Acceptance. Tolerance has some kind of negative connotations. I am tolerating today to you, and tomorrow I may not tolerate. I may hear. It is accept. Then it is a kind of positive. Therefore, it is possible to only develop this introspective consciousness and this kind of things. And this introspective consciousness, and which talk about the real nature of Svabhava, my real nature, that kind of idea which talk about Svabhava. Whenever I have a Svabhava, I have many kind of vichar, because vichar means some kind of judgments about some kind of particular facts. Therefore, it is a kind of and whenever this Svabhava and vichar, then it will lead to the some kind of a constant sadhana. Sadhana is necessary to lead to this kind of introspective life, and therefore this is a kind of whenever we introspective and sadhana, it is a kind of self-analysis. I am analyzing myself, what I have done today, what I am going to do tomorrow, and in this process, and we are always to be rational, to be good, towards good always, because you see. And that goodness will reflect in this kind of actions, and it is a kind of self-analysis. And whenever we are doing sadhana, it is a kind of path, it is a kind of a roadmap for us. And this path that guides us, actually, this introspective that guides us for the self-reliance. You have to, it's not that somebody else will come over here and to save you. You have to help yourself to save not only yourself, but also for the world and other beings also in that sense. Therefore, it is a kind of a, we can say that because I have a little knowledge in Sanskrit, Atma Samikya, so we can say Atma Samikya, and that will bring some kind of self-realizations. That self-realizations will bring in the experience of in especially Vedantic way of saying that Brahman, that which is existing within this self, and then you can realize the Brahman, and that moment which is in some kind of a self, whenever you are realizing Brahman, you will realize your self-determinations, what kind of limitations of yourself. I am not a big things in the world, rather than I am a small elements, a small being in the world which is existing. And in this sense, whenever we do this kind of ideas, especially introspective thoughts, and which bring some kind of feelings, and these feelings brings understanding, because we cannot show everything else. I cannot show you how two hydrogen molecules and one H2O and one oxygen molecule is converting into water. But we understand that this is happening whenever I am putting these chemicals and this is happening. But I cannot show this. Therefore, understanding plays a vital role because therefore understanding cannot be put in the mechanistic framework, which can mechanistic here I mean is that scientific framework which can explain this in this manner. Therefore, and in this understanding, if you understand, you will develop the compassions. You will develop the compassions and that kind of idea also being this kind of compassions, kindness, and therefore there is no kind of negativity. In this way, it is, I have time. Yeah. Therefore, it brings some kind of positiveness and goes towards the and remove the negative aspect of the life. Therefore, this other is the title of my talk is on how the introspective consciousness brings some kind of ethical life. This ethical life is necessary. Therefore, it will disjunct. This introspective consciousness is a kind of disjunction of the conjunction of sorrow in our lives. Whatever the sorrow is there or some kind of bad thoughts are there, and you will do some kind of disjunctions from there, and you will conjunction to a better life, and that will lead also. Again, many times introspection happens in silence. Silence is another important point in the introspective consciousness, and which is, silence is the recharge of our mind. Many times we maintain silence. You see, Gandhi was also maintaining silence, Gautam Buddha was maintaining silence. Silence, I mean dialogue also continues. It's not a silence. When I visited my village, because I am staying at Bombay, always some noise is there. When you go to some rural areas, anywhere else, you find silence. But silence has a music in itself. That music gives you peace. In the same sense, this introspective consciousness brings some kind of peace and some kind of happiness. Therefore, this introspective consciousness, anybody can practice this and lead better life for the world. Very shortly and briefly, I talk to you. As they have repeated me, and I don't have any time. Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you.